Mike certainly knows what he's talking about. He's had a successful career as a business entrepreneur, an executive, and also the head of a very prestigious management consulting practice called Criterion, LLC. His client base includes a lot of not only medium and small firms, but a few Fortune 500 firms and some work for the government. They deal with everything from strategic planning and execution, change management, operational design and execution, financial analysis and planning there, executive leadership, quite a few other things. Mike has both a bachelor's and a PhD from Georgia Tech. He and I have a lot to talk about. His PhD was in quantum mechanics, something that I have trouble spelling, much less really kind of understanding. But in any event, he is a very original, very thoughtful person in that, and I think that you will find that his presentation today will give you some food for thought. Without further ado, I thank y'all for being here. Thank our hosts, King and Spalding, and want to welcome Mike Cobb.
Great. Thank you.
Actually, I'd like to recognize a couple of people who are sitting out there because they're people that I work very closely with. Yulian Zung, who's sitting right here on the second row, is a member of our team. She's an advisor in the area of business process and IT solutions. Yulian is getting her PhD in industrial engineering at Georgia Tech right now. So thanks for being here. And I also want to recognize Jay Davis, who's sitting right back here in the camel-haired jacket. Criterion works very closely with another consulting practice here in Atlanta called Innovanet Technology Group. And Jay is the Chief Operating Officer of Innovanet, so I just want to recognize those two people that I would imagine all, if not most of you, have heard of this story. Who's heard of the story of the benevolent farmer before? Well, I'm going to tell the story very briefly with apologies to Bertrand Russell, to whom the story is usually attributed, with obvious apologies to the Brothers Grimm, although this was never one of their fairy tales, but I guess it could have been. And with apologies to Nassim Taleb, who was the author of The Black Swan, and probably has done more to introduce the concept of the black swan into the popular culture than anybody else around, although there's some other people that I think are doing some really interesting things out there that probably are in some ways better than what Taleb has done. In any event, here's the story very quickly. So there are these chickens in the barnyard, and as chickens often do, they talk to each other. They get together and they talk about, they talk about the weather. They talk about those strange bovine creatures on the other end of the barnyard, and sometimes they talk about the farmer and they talk about how good he is and what a great guy he is. I mean, he comes every day, he feeds them, and he takes care of them, and he's such a great person. Every morning the sun comes up and the farmer comes out to the barnyard and feeds them every morning. One morning the sun comes up, the farmer comes out to the barnyard, and you know the rest of the story. To the observers, i.e. the chickens, this was a black swan event. They noticed that sometimes a chicken would disappear, but they didn't really think much about it. Their inductive reasoning, if chickens can inductively reason, I'm stretching this a little bit, but their inductive reasoning told them that every morning when the sun came up, they would get fed. So we're going to talk about black swans a little bit. Who has read Nicholas or Nassim Nicholas Taleb's book? Anybody here? Okay, a couple of people. I highly recommend it. What is a black swan event? The black swan event is a seemingly unpredictable event, at least to a large number of observers. Not to everybody necessarily, but to a large number of observers. It is beyond the realm of normal expectations. It usually results, but not always, but usually results in an extreme outcome of one form or another. It is, the probability is difficult to compute before the fact. It doesn't lend itself readily to traditional risk analysis and analytical approaches to predict whether it's going to happen or not. It is also strongly impacted by psychological biases that we all possess that prevent us from seeing what, in retrospect, is the obvious. And the last point, speaking of retrospect, is there is usually a high degree of clarity and explanation after the fact. So we look at these events, and after the fact, with crystal clarity, we say, yeah, that was obvious. I could have predicted that. I could have predicted that that would have happened. What I'd like to do is share with you a few events that have occurred. And I want you to think about those principles that I just laid out and ask yourself, was this a black swan event? Could it have been predicted? Was it predicted? And also, what impact did it have on business? So, in 1914, and these are in chronological order, in 1914, a Bosnian Serb assassinates Franz Ferdinand, which set off a war that literally changed the world. Was that a black swan event? It certainly impacted everything about the entire world and the way business was done. An obscure network called the ARPANET in the 70s morphed into something that we call the internet now. I don't think many people predicted that that would happen, but it just sort of happened. Black swan event, maybe. 1982, a crazy guy with access to potassium cyanide laces Tylenol bottles, people were killed. Overnight, Johnson & Johnson's market share for the Tylenol product dropped from 35% to 88%, almost overnight. No risk analysis that Johnson & Johnson had done, no strategic planning that Johnson & Johnson had done prepared the company for what happened overnight. I would say that was probably a black swan event to Johnson & Johnson as an observer. 9/11, Mike mentioned 9/11 earlier. You know, who had thought about, you can argue in retrospect, there were some people thinking about it, that an airplane would be used as a weapon. Yeah, people had hijacked planes before and things like that, but have been used as a weapon before. Here are some that you may not know about. A thunderstorm in New Mexico in 2000. You know, thunderstorms occur all the time, but a thunderstorm in 2000 caused what really was in many respects a minor fire at a semiconductor plant, a Phillips plant in New Mexico. Totally impacted cell phone manufacturers throughout the world. In Japan, also Nokia and Ericsson, and resulted in major losses for them because of supply chain disruption. Black swan event? Maybe. The SARS outbreak resulted in a 2% decline in East Asian GDPs in early 2003. Bear Stearns. I was in Mexico the 3-day weekend that Bear Stearns disappeared. Literally over 3 days, Bear Stearns disappeared. Pretty phenomenal. You know, you have a company that had a sterling reputation and by all accounts was strong, and over 3 days, the 14th, 15th, and 16th of March in 2008, the company was gone. I was down there, and we were calling back and forth, sort of watching it happen from afar. Now, I have friends that were at Bear Stearns for years, were at Bear Stearns 15 years ago in the days of Ace Greenberg when Bear Stearns was just riding a high. And, you know, one of them, who was a brilliant guy, told me, well, if you looked at Bear Stearns' balance sheet and if you looked at some of the things they were doing with structured equities, you would have predicted that this would have happened. But nobody predicted it, to my knowledge. But I think they're really important to what I'm saying today. Number one, We are living in a world of extreme volatility and uncertainty. Now, people have said that before. People have said that. Probably every generation has said that. But the pace has certainly accelerated. And if you combine that with the fact that we're living in a world where the terrain is literally shifting underneath our feet. I mean, we're in this room right now, and things are changing at lightning speed. And that compounds the probability of an uncertain event occurring or a highly unexpected event, and the impact of that unexpected event. So how do businesses effectively deal with this today? How do they effectively execute strategies in this kind of environment? I will argue, that traditional strategic planning methods simply fall far short of helping companies prepare for things like this. Now, I was talking to someone in the audience who's in business school at Emory right now, and if you look at the traditional strategic planning approaches, they're still being taught in B school. Now, some business schools are getting away from this, some more than others, but you still do a business or situation analysis. It might be SWOT analysis, it might be pest analysis, it might be STEER, it might be EPISTLE. I mean, the acronyms go on and on and on and on ad nauseum. And I'm not saying these things aren't important, but they're all informed by past experience, and they do little, in my opinion, to help a company prepare for a black swan event. The concept of known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns was actually, I guess, the first time I heard about it was from Donald Rumsfeld. And, you either love him or hate him. I'm not going to get into the politics of whether, you love or hate or neutral about Donald Rumsfeld, but I think this was pretty prescient, okay? And so his point was, there are things we know that we know, and there are things we know that we don't know, but what's really scary out there are the things that we don't know we don't know. And that's the root of black swan events, and that's where, in my opinion, the greatest risk and the greatest potential impact reside. It's in those things that we don't know we don't know. Now, I'm going to read you a quote. It's a little convoluted and complicated, but I'm just going to read it quickly. I don't know. There are two Italian economists, Salvatore Modica and Aldo Rustaccini. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of them. They do a lot of work in the area of neuroeconomics, where economics and neuroscience come together, sort of sometimes called behavioral economics. And they do a lot of work with game theory and decision theory. And so here's the quote, and I'm interjecting my own known unknown, and unknown unknowns into this. These were not terms that they used. But a subject is certain of something when he knows that thing. Okay, those are known knowns, right? He's uncertain when he doesn't know it, but he knows he doesn't know it. So he's consciously uncertain of something. Those are known unknowns. On the other hand, he's unaware of something when he doesn't know it, and he doesn't know that he doesn't know it, and so on ad infinitum. He doesn't perceive, he doesn't have it in mind, he doesn't have in mind the object of knowledge. And those are the unknown unknowns, which most traditional methods of business analysis and business management don't even begin to address. So if you think about this graphically, the business decisions that we make, the world that we live in, the way we react to the world we live in is within this blue region, the region of known knowns and known unknowns. That's where we do strategic planning. That's where we do traditional risk analysis. That's where we project our performance. And it's all within what I call the knowledge frontier. And we spend little time, or at least I think it's changed since 9/11, but we have traditionally spent little time living outside of that knowledge frontier and thinking about outside of that knowledge frontier. And that's where the greatest risk and the greatest impact lie. And I think there are ways that we can expand that knowledge frontier, which is one of the things I want to talk about. Most of us gravitate toward what we know. It's human nature, what we can grasp and readily understand. We live in a comfort zone that we like to live in. We like things that we can grab onto, that we can point to, things that are tangible, things that we can easily analyze and tear apart, dissect. We like formulaic, logical solutions. We like things that are clear to us. We like things that are predictable, and we like to be able to think that we manage risk and outcomes. But in reality, we need to focus on what we don't know. Things that we can't grasp and readily understand. And I will tell you, working in the business world for 30 years, I honestly believe, I think this is changing, but this is something that a lot of business leaders have so much trouble embracing. Business leaders want to have the answers, want to make decisive decisions and move on. They don't want to admit that what we don't know is more important than what we know. I just think this is a real challenge for businesses to overcome, and it's absolutely critical to overcome. Things outside of our comfort zone, things that we can't easily analyze, messy, fuzzy stuff, fuzzy logic, if you will. That's where we need to spend more time living. Things that aren't clear and things that aren't predictable. The key is to build a highly aware, agile, and resilient organization. Aware, agile, and resilient organization that can fend off the negative black swans and harness the opportunities from the positive ones. So I'm going to share with you 18 practices that I would posit are good practices for companies to embrace if they want to do a better job of harnessing the good black swans that occur and being able to deal effectively with the bad ones. We spend so much time in the business decisions we make focusing on our market, our company, our industry, our supply chain maybe. Well, that's great, but we need to spend more time enhancing our knowledge of things beyond the domain that we live in every day that could have a significant impact on our business. We need to accept, be aware, and anticipate that there are things we don't know. I think that's a tough thing for a lot of people to grasp. I would just like to leave you with 5 points. Number one, traditional strategic planning and risk analysis methods, they remain valuable tools today for day-to-day decision making, but they fall far short of really equipping businesses with what they really need to survive in a black swan world. What they really need is to take those approaches but build on them by leveraging awareness, agility, and resilience. Number three, these stochastic and other decision analysis methods improve the ability to deal with risk and uncertainty, but they will not predict unexpected events, but they are powerful tools for stimulating creative thinking and expanding the knowledge frontier and helping give companies that awareness, agility, and resilience. So the goal should not be to predict black swans, but to prepare for them and respond effectively to them. Thank you so much. This has been fun.